conversation with the boss, you have something to back you up. I think my life just looks a little bit different than some other people's. I would not say I'm an expert at work-life balance, but it's a priority for me.
Hey, so for the first time, Abby, we talked to somebody that's not in front of the camera, but behind the camera when it comes to working in sports TV, and this was a really cool conversation.
We have to give a shout out to our co-founder, Zach Milliken, who works with, her name is Jenny Glazer. She is a director at NBC. She is the only female director at NBC, and so while she is a very humble person, as you'll see, we want to be her hype women, and we want to showcase just how incredible an achievement that is.
I mean, she says she's not a trailblazer, but what we see is her blazing the trail for other young women who want to be in that lead role in a television truck for a major sports broadcast. So very, very inspirational. Here's our conversation with Jenny Glazer.
How did you get into production?
So I was a history major at Penn, which has nothing to do with obviously what I do now.
No, not at all.
But a cinema minor. So part of me knew that I wanted to do something with film and television. I actually thought back in the day that I wanted to be a feature film director. I mean, who knows? Maybe that pipe dream isn't dead yet. But I got an internship at the Today Show after my junior year of college. And that's where I was really first exposed to live television and, rundowns and the whole environment in a control room. And I was immediately hooked. And someone that worked at the Today Show actually connected me to like a runner position at the London Olympics back in 2012, where I fell further in love with sports and television together. And then I just sort of grinded away and kept emailing them after the Olympics about a PA position at NBC Sports. And I got my foot in the door in October of 2012, and I have been there ever since, which is very strange, it turns out, for people my age. I'm like the only one of my friends that has the same job as when I left college.
You said you started as an Olympic production assistant. How long did you do that for? And then what were sort of your next steps?
So I graduated from Penn, and I knew I'd applied to an internship for the London Olympics, which was, that's a 2-week period. That's it. And I told my parents, I think I can do that, and then I can sort of make some connections and really go from there. And I said, before then, there's June and July. I'll babysit for those 2 months. I'll make as much money as I can. And they were kind of, hesitant, but I think they understood that it was a little bit of a different working environment. My parents work in architecture and build houses together. So they're sort of unfamiliar with a lot of corporate working environments. So I think they kind of just trusted me to do my thing. But yeah, I eventually went to London for 2 weeks. I formed some great relationships, and I just kept emailing people. When I got back, I moved to New York without a real full-time job. I did a bunch of temp work for the month of September and kept emailing NBC, and finally a position opened up, and yeah, the rest is history from that point on.
Amazing. Okay, so then how did you decide you wanted to be a director? Because when you go in at that PA level, there are so many different options. And especially, I feel like from that position, it's mostly like a producer track, right? The director is, at least in my experience, is something that it's a completely different skill, really, because you're managing so many other things while the producer is thinking so much about content, right? You're mainly focused on the visuals. What attracted you to directing, and how did you kind of carve that path?
Yeah, so I spent, a lot of the last almost 13 years at NBC. I've been either a graphics PA or an associate director. And I think for me personally, the parts of those jobs I enjoyed was my experiences with, as we like to call them, the technical folks. So whether that be, the graphics operator or the technical director.
Zach, our co-founder. He's going to say, I think that's a shout out to Zach.
And while I really love, storytelling and all the producerial parts of production, I think I felt more like my impact could be better suited to, working with technical people. And our director, Charlie Daymeyer, always said, he chose directing because he wanted to have more regular conversations with technical people. He didn't necessarily want to communicate with talent on a day-to-day basis. That's not to say that we still don't do that. No offense to talent folks, but yeah, I think I just found the whole operational side of it to be more piquing my interest. And then, yeah, the visual side as well. That's a little teeny tiny bit of my cinema minor from Penn coming out probably. I always have been intrigued in visuals. That my dad was an architecture, by training, went to school for architecture. So I have like a little bit of that visual seed in me. Probably not to his same extent, but yeah, that's kind of what got me down that directing path.
I feel like there aren't very many female directors. It is a very
It's still pretty male dominated, especially in sports. I mean,
everything is male dominated in sports, but I feel like I can name one great message director.
Yes, I had
Met
the
same Rose
Mareki with others. So I was talking to Zach. Speaking of Zach, I was talking to him before this, and I remember my first season working with the Boston Bruins and seeing, we'd go to all these different cities and we'd meet up with all these different home and away crews and whatnot. And Rose, I can't remember if there was another female director, let alone like assistant producer,
even it's an OG
assistant.
It's still just Rose.
It was so few far between. It could be still just Rose. I think, and well, now we know Amanda used to be on the technical side of things, but I think she made her way up to director as well. She does PWHL games now, but yeah, it was amazing to see Rose
she's been doing it over a year, doing it for
so long, and able to command the truck and to be in a world where there just wasn't anyone that looked like her. It's
well, and that's what I was gonna say is you are the boss of the truck, and I feel like is that where you've felt the most barriers, or what does it feel like to be a woman in command of all of those men who are not necessarily used to being in that kind of position?
Yeah, I mean, to be honest, it's a little awkward sometimes, and it depends on who you're working with. Our football crew, I had the opportunity to step in to direct one of our games this fall because our director had a loss in his family, unfortunately. But yeah, it was a great opportunity for me. But I know all of these guys really well. I mean, they're all basically my family away from my road family, if you will. So it wasn't remotely uncomfortable with any of them. If anything, everyone was just proud of me and happy to support me in any way. But that's not always the case, and I think it might be the reason why women are more prone to choosing a producerial path. I think women are very organized people. A lot of the women that I know in production are great storytellers, so that kind of would push them towards the producer avenue naturally anyways. But I think part of it also might be because it is a little intimidating to think, okay, I'm going to have to be the boss of all these men that are, maybe older than me and might not be used to a female giving them, direction. But the more you do it, honestly, the less weird and scary it gets. And to this day, I will still work with older men who are definitely not used to female directors. And I kind of just put that experience in a little box, and it's not really part of my larger experience, which is, for the most part, really supportive and great.
Do you recognize the trail that you're blazing for other young, aspiring female directors? I mean, do you feel it at all? I'm sure you get a lot of, young girls coming up to you and saying, hey, this is really cool. I might want to be a TV director when I grow up.
I think I don't, honestly, and Zach could tell you this. I'm not a big person that calls attention to myself. I mean, for better or for worse, like I never really even get involved in the, all female productions that happen at NBC Sports, largely because I'm usually part of male dominated production crews because I don't even mean to be cocky when I say this. I'm a strong person at my job, which means that I work with these crews that are largely dominated by male producers, male directors, um, and just sheer numbers wise, there's 80% men at work and 20% women. So I don't always get to work with all women or get to work with more women than men. So I probably don't even recognize. I wouldn't call myself a trailblazer because I'm definitely not. I don't want to indulge myself that much, but I appreciate.
We can do that. No, we will do. Well, yeah, I think that that's absolutely true.
Yeah, because we've been in sports a long time, and I can still count the number of women that are leading roles in trucks on probably one hand, maybe two.
And I think what you're humbly saying is that you're not on those all-women broadcasts because you're working on the biggest broadcast that NBC has, and they unfortunately still do not put all women on those broadcasts yet.
Right. And I think I am also like I sort of want my body of work to speak for itself, so I'm certainly not going to call attention to myself for being the first to do something. If someone wants to recognize that, that's great. But these men are also, I mean, not to bag on all these men are a lot of my really good friends, and
For sure.
I really value my coworkers kind of regardless of their sex. That not to say that I don't place a degree of importance on the fact that, I do like working with other powerful women at work. I think I almost don't do it enough, so I don't understand it enough and how powerful it can be sometimes. But I also really supported by a lot of my male coworkers. They're big proponents, or they're big cheerleaders for me a lot of the time, even though they treat me like they're little sisters a lot of the time.
I can totally understand that, because I think when I get asked a lot of times about, being a woman in sports, one of the things that I definitely get asked a lot of times, oh, have you ever faced discrimination, that kind of thing. And I always say, well, I've been lucky enough to be surrounded by extremely supportive men and men who wanted me to succeed. And so I probably did not have the experiences that maybe they were looking for the answers to. But yeah, so I can totally empathize with that and understand that, and feeling lucky to have been put in a situation where men or women wanted you to succeed, right?
Right.
I also feel like most of your work is done in the dark. Like in a TV truck, everything is dark. There are no windows, and there's no really. It's just kind of everyone working, doing their job, everyone filling their role and doing it to the best of their abilities, and there aren't a lot of accolades for that. It's the epitome of being behind the camera.
That's a good point. Like, what is your day-to-day? I want to know what your day-to-day is like.
Because you have long days. Like, do you have a life outside of the truck? Our director on NBA games, he is there from, I think, like 10:30, 11 a.m. until we finish and wrap up at 11 p.m. with whatever that is. And then we travel that night. And so I can't imagine. Yeah, the days are so long.
It depends on the season.
Yeah, take us through like a typical game day.
Yeah, I guess I'll take our Big Ten Saturday night game day. Or that week is basically, I'll start on Monday. We just start preparing for the game. So we do game ideas because we have meetings on Tuesday where we sort of pitch our best ideas for each team. You watch back the game from the previous week. And then, your normal responsibilities start to pick up as the week nears closer to the game. So, weird thing for me, as Zach knows, I pick the playlist, if you will, of music that we played along with our very picky producer, Matt Marvin. So that, among many other things, I just sort of chip away at through the week. And then when we get to wherever we're going, we usually have a full set day on Fridays. So that's usually 8 to... Zach's usually there later than me, but 8 to 8 usually. And game day is usually a game day staple for me is I always go for a walk with my director. It's our only time to kind of clear our heads and move our body and before we sit for, 10 hours. And then we usually are there at around 12 o'clock for a 7 o'clock game. And we leave around 11:30. So we go through a whole We test out all the equipment. We test out all of our different production workflows, have a bunch of meetings before the game. And that usually goes, that day is usually around 13 or 14 hours.
Yeah. What time is the walk in the morning?
The walk ranges. Usually we have a meeting at 10 a.m. at the hotel. So we usually try and walk by 7 so we can get, a good 4 or 5 miles in the morning. And as we've started to do it,
that's a real walk.
We have some new members of the walk. Catherine Tappan is a member of our walk. She's the best. Todd Blackledge has joined our walk.
How do you see now your interests and career progressing from here? Where do you see your next journey and your next steps forward?
Yeah, so I don't know if Zach even knows, but I will step into a directing role on college football in the fall. So I'll step away from our show.
Congratulations.
Thank you, yeah.
That's awesome.
Yeah,
The package got bigger, right? With the Big Ten?
It did, yes. So we have a lot more opportunity, which is great. It's a little scary because I have my road family that I've been with now for a long time, and I have to leave them and sort of lead a whole different crew, which is a little bit of a new thing. And sometimes I think to myself, am I old enough to be doing this yet? But I think my focus will really be on directing. I'll still be an associate director on some bigger events. We do have the NBA coming up in the fall at NBC. I just did my review for last year and kind of setting my goals for this next year. I think I do want to place an emphasis on mentoring some of the younger PAs and APs, male or female, to be honest. I think I kind of just want to feel like the younger generation can both ask me a question about work or ask me a question about not work. If they just want to say, hey, I'm having a tough day, or, where should I live in New York City? I want more people to feel like they can have that kind of conversation with me.
Jenny, can I ask you, how did you navigate pushing for more opportunity while trying to, like you said, you are going to be one of the younger directors in a truck and probably at NBC. How did you approach those conversations, and how do you feel like you achieved being able to move up without seeming ungrateful or having people think that you're just trying to climb in places, which I think is kind of a label that's placed on a lot of women, but also they're tough conversations to have?
Yeah, it's a great question. I mean, I really try and focus on doing the task that's right in front of me as well as I possibly can. And I really am not a big fan of people that are constantly looking at the next thing and the next opportunity, because I think it just sort of prevents you from, committing yourself to the thing that's right in front of you. While I'm in the middle of that thing that I'm doing, whether it be, ADing track and field at the Olympics, I really just put my head down and I work, and I try and complain as little as I can, and I just try and work as hard as I can and give it my all. That's such a cliche, but it really is the only thing that matters. Probably in an industry, but especially ours. If you really spend the time and model yourself after who you know are hardworking people. I have great models of that in my life. My manager at work is my director that I go on walks with. He's one of the most hardworking people that I know, and I understand how he got to where he is, and that's really by doing just what we're saying. Putting his head down, doing the work, not trying to look too far down the line about future opportunities, because you're just never you can't be the master of many if you're not, the master of one thing at a time.
Yeah, I think probably we're trained to, constantly look for, okay, like, how do we better ourselves? How do we get to the next step? How do we climb up the ladder? And just, societally, we're kind of conditioned for that. But to take the moment and be like, no, my hard work is going to be enough. My hard work is going to be what gets me to the next level naturally. I think that's, takes a lot of confidence, but I think it's great because it ultimately produces what you want, which is the great output, right?
And that is the one thing that you can control.
And I think ultimately then when you want to have a conversation with the boss, you have something to back you up. That's the only
to show.
That's the only thing that I can sort of reinforce my. I come up for air maybe once a year and have a conversation with my boss, and I usually just say, "Hey, this is what I did well. What do you think I can do better?" And that kind of thing.
Do you have a work-life balance?
No, to be honest.
No. Yeah. I know. I don't know. And
I wanted you to say yes, Jenny. I wanted you to be like, here's how to
No,
master
you
your
know what?
work-life balance.
I do, in the fact that I have great friends and family that I do try and see. In peak season, it's always hard. I try and work out. That's my me time. But I was just talking to a friend about this yesterday. It is a little bit of a where we were talking about, can you have it all, right? I'm going to be 35 in June, and a bunch of my friends already have small kids of their own, and I have certainly thought about it. And part of me thinks that I couldn't have gotten as far as I've gotten right now if I did have my own kids. I think so much of my life is on the road and involves so much travel that it would be really hard for me personally. But that doesn't mean that I can't eventually have all of those things. I think my life just looks a little bit different than some other people's. So I try and create a balance. It's not always easy. At the Olympics, it's not easy because you work all the time, as you guys know. But it's something that I'm aware of and I strive towards. I would not say I'm an expert at work-life balance, but it's a priority for me.
And not to get too personal, but the not having a family yet, was that a conscious choice by you, or it's just kind of another one of those things where you're putting your head down, you're putting in the work, and this is?
It's not. It's really just, it wasn't.
Which I think is a unique, it's not something that men necessarily have to think about. I do think that men, they can come up, and this is all, I'm generalizing, I understand, but men can kind of come up for air at 35 and be like, oh, yes, I do want to start a family right now. And kind of, there's not this biological clock that is ticking when they do decide that they want to do that. Whereas a lot of women who I know and who work in our industry, it's something that they do start kind of thinking about earlier, because you have to, because your body, if you do want all of those things, it is really reliant on you as the mother to figure out, do those things, to produce those things, provide the womb, very scientifically. And so I do think it has to be more of a conscious decision and choices that we have to make and things that women have to think about probably before a lot of men would.
Yeah, I think I really have enjoyed putting so much of myself into work over the last decade. And I'm sure you could ask my mother and she would say that I prioritize my work over my personal life from time to time. I didn't want to have to choose. So, I mean, it's not even a big deal for me to say, but a couple years ago, I froze my eggs just so I could have the opportunity in the future to have children, because I do love children. My sister has 2 beautiful kids that I love. But also so that I didn't have to put any type of timeline on myself, because my career is really important to me. And I just want to be able to do it on my own timeline, if that makes sense.
Absolutely.
I appreciate you sharing that. Being honest about that, because I mean, that is the reality of what women and certainly women, especially in this industry, are facing, that, the timeline.
But it's also something that you had to pay for yourself. I mean, you had to prepare and do all of the fertility things to even be able to get to that point, to be able to do that. And so it is. I think it's a reality and something that I didn't know about until I spoke to other women in the industry. And there was a lot of women who were going through the same thing and debating whether it was worth it, the cost of doing that, or if they could even afford it. And so I think
but also it gives you control of what you may possibly want for yourself in the future. Was there a moment, I think early on, or like just a really big accomplishment or just something that happened on TV, or like your first time directing, that you were just like, yes, this is what I want to do. This is why you're still at NBC and have been working towards this for your entire adult life?
Probably a big moment was we lost the NHL a couple of years ago, but our last Stanley Cup final run, I was with the producer and director that I actually work with on college football now. I think 2021 NHL season, those playoffs, it felt like in the truck, everything was just, we didn't have to, there were unspoken things among us, and we had so much fun, and the shows were great. And maybe part of
That
it
means a
was
lot
knowing
in
that we were
hockey.
about to lose it, but we really savored each other's
Yeah.
company. And we put out a great product, and, we got really good feedback from, our Canadian friends, from people at NBC. And it felt like, oh, it does. Yeah, I guess, of course. Um, and I felt like, if you put all this hard work into something and you get to do it with people that you love, I mean, how could I want to do something else, I guess. So even though there are really hard times and you have to put so many hours into your work, and you do have to travel quite a bit, um, if you can put out a product and have fun doing it, and do it with people that you love, I feel really, really blessed to be able to do that. I don't think a lot of people get to do that in their jobs.
What is your favorite fan shot to take? Do you have one?
Ooh, we always love, this is probably from my manager and good friend Chuck D too. We love the dejected person, because there's two sides of a
Yeah.
story always. There's always the elated person and then the dejected person. So the dejected person is usually who I try and remind myself to cut into the live cut, because they're just as much as the part of the story as the jubilated person, or the person who's celebrating.
And if not more emotional. You can feel
Yes.
the raw pain.
I can imagine.
Does land.
I can imagine the fun conversations happening on the headset when you find that one dejected fan that's going to represent everything about this game.
Jenny, the Olympics are such a large undertaking that I don't think as a fan you can really comprehend. And you mentioned you worked on track and field, which is one of the marquee events of the Summer Olympics, which, I mean, the biggest sports, I think, event ever in the world. What is your approach to that? Do you kind of recognize the magnitude of what you're working on, or is it something where you can just kind of focus in and lock in on what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure, honestly. I did the opening ceremony ahead of track and field next year.
Oh, wow.
And it was my first time working on opening ceremony. I was an associate director on that show. And there's so many people that the Olympic organizing committee, they spend years putting together this whole sequence of this incredible opening ceremony, and you don't want to misrepresent it in any ways.
And Paris did an incredible job. That was, I mean, my favorite that I've seen so far.
It's beautiful.
I think it's just relying on all the other talented people around you. It's really stressful, but I've been fortunate for years at the Olympics to have these incredible people around me that not only know what they're doing probably a little bit better than I do, but they're great, outlets for any questions that I might have, or any, stress that I might need to bounce off of them.
How do you manage that? Feeling that kind of pressure and then being able to deliver.
It's a lot too, right? A lot of details, a lot of information. And how do you process all that?
I think it's unique in that you work more than you ever do in your life for a 2.5 week period, right? And I think, me personally, I'm able to get through it because I know it's a defined short period of time. That doesn't mean that it's not really difficult day to day to only get 4 or 5 hours of sleep. But I think you just try and remind yourself that you're providing, especially Paris this last year, you're providing real joy and entertainment that's really, really unique to such a huge viewership, that you just sort of try and take it day by day. Don't sweat the small stuff, even though in the moment people are probably screaming about it. But yeah, just surround yourself with good people.
How gratifying is that? What the feeling after an Olympics? I just remember in Pyeongchang after the last event, walking through the downtown and being like, I did that then. And no one can ever take that away. And you've done it many, many times over.
It's cool. It's I think the Olympics is really unique. It's a unique feeling when you get there. You get to work with all these people that you don't normally get to work with, for the most part. Not as much these days because so many people are back in our Connecticut facility. But it feels like a real special event. Not only the Olympics themselves, but the production behind it. And I think I don't always feel this way, but certainly after Paris, I did feel a certain degree of pride about that because there was such incredibly positive feedback in the United States, at least. And even the Parisians, they kind of went from being bitter about it in the beginning to really celebrating the Olympics. And it just made you feel like you were part of something really, really cool.
Yeah, it is really awesome. I love the Olympics. It's like my favorite thing to watch, my favorite thing to work on.
Yeah, the music gives me a unique feeling every time I hear it, that theme music. So,
and then you get your name on the credits.
That Jenny has seen it. You guys, you free yourself. That is the epitome for anyone who works in sports, and then sports broadcasting especially.
I mean, I will say this, like, I think, and I don't want this podcast to end without people knowing exactly all of the little things that you do every single week, every single game, and all of the different skill sets that you have to have in order to actually be a director. I mean, can you maybe just put into words what it's meant for you to recognize that you have the skills to be able to connect with people from all different facets of television in order to make that comprehensive game product?
Yeah, I think it's just been along the way trying to understand as many jobs and workflows as I can. I mean, I did graphics for a long time, and I always, I wasn't an operator and I didn't necessarily know the ins and outs of that machine, but I tried to know as much as I could. And I try and do that for all different kinds of positions, whether it be production positions or technical positions, because the more you know about everyone's individual role in a production, then you can kind of better form the product as a whole. And I think understanding people's limits and how long it takes someone to do something or how difficult it is for someone to do something is really, really important. And, doing all those jobs along the way, I was at PA for a long time, an AP, and, having a versatility of skills is really important because it not only allows you it informs your decision making when you become a director, but it also just kind of shapes your overall understanding of a production and what makes it a good one.
I love that. And also, working in sports and having been an athlete too, do you have like game day routines? I know you talked about the WAP, but do you have like a game day routine that kind of like
suspicions? Yeah, they're like superstitions, yeah.
Where you kind of like just, okay, here we go. Let's begin.
I like to use like the same pen and pencil every game day. I have the same clipboard now that I use every game day. I have my pen case that has to be visible. So there's definitely a little bit of sports, former athlete craziness that I'm still bringing to my day-to-day life. You can't get rid of that.
It is inspiring.
So Abby, I really appreciated Jenny being super honest and candid about how work-life balance is actually pretty tough, and at the same time that she's put a lot into her career, and she's proud of the fact that she was able to put that into her career so far.
I feel like she gave us some really good advice in that just how important and valuable hard work is. And when you're able to stand on that, it really can propel you to many other opportunities. And I think that I know that she doesn't want to call herself a trailblazer or doesn't want to be out there and broadcasting to the world all of her accomplishments, but just the fact that she is there and is doing that job and doing it so well, I think is really something that deserves to be highlighted. And I'm so excited that we got a chance to speak with her and learn from her.
I know it's funny to think that she doesn't think of herself as a trailblazer, but she really is blazing the trail. The fact that she's one of just a few women that we know, and between you and I, like, we know a lot of women in the industry, but I don't know, just one or two of them are directors, and that's it. I mean, that's pretty incredible.
It's a hard job. You're the boss of an entire truck. You're managing, tens to hundreds of people. And so it's incredible that she's been able to do that and command the respect of all of her peers.
Yeah, she comes with such high praise, which we loved. And we want to emphasize that even at the end of this podcast, because I think, the fact that her colleagues are saying these amazing things about her, how she's so smart, she's so organized, she's so good at what she does, I think speaks to the quality of the work and the opportunities that she's gotten to.
And she deserves Hive Women. So we are happy to be here to do it. And we're grateful for the opportunity. So thank you so much for listening and watching. Please give us a like, a follow, or a comment, or let us know whoever else you would like us to speak with.